Hey everybody. As many of you may know, I've been looking at the maps of the world and many other things geologically for a while now. And from the beginning, I see in many dots that could be connected. I've been holding off on doing this video for a while until I had a really good assessment on the whole situation. And a lot of my ideas are not coming out of nowhere. I've been studying, basically I've been balls deep into conspiracy theories and world powers and economics and central banking and history and Fukushima and so much for the last 10 years basically. I even had, the good stretch of UFOs and 2012 before that came along and many things. So my ideas don't come from nowhere. So today, like I said, I've been holding off on doing this video because a lot of it is my guessing, my 2 or 3 cents worth on things. I figured, screw it, the time's come, I'm going to put it down for you today. And there's a good many points that I'm going to be getting to. This video will probably get a little long, I do apologize. You should find it kind of interesting. There's going to be 2 or 3 rants, perhaps, that I'm going to go on to help educate you on some things and get an idea where I'm coming from. So first of all, my original videos, I did on the world in general. I did right off the top. As soon as I seen things wrong, I started rolling the camera. I want you guys to get a good idea of my feel on it and be a little more real about it. Now that I've had a chance to assess the situation a lot, I'd like to give you a more huge rundown and my perspective of it. A lot of the small changes in the world are really just consequences of other things, the way I see it. And there's, like I said, there's a good 7 or 8 major points here that I think was the intent for the changes. And yes, I do believe there is intent, even in changes that don't involve the map, but I'm not going to get into that today. So for me, South America being where it is, and I've mentioned this before, but it's hands down, balls on the table. I know for a fact South America is not where it belongs, and I would have known this fact since before I was a teenager. From this East Coast part of Canada should just be nicking on the edge of Brazil here, and clearly that's not the case. So, like most of my videos, I don't really write a lot down, I don't plan much, I just go with the flow and spit what I gotta say. Hopefully it comes out alright today. I did make a bunch of individual notes here, so let's see how she goes. First one I'm going to start with is, actually, I'm going to start with the most significant one. As far as not for size, but for reason. And actually they're also the reason for many others. And it was the second thing I seen. So I had seen South America, I was like, oh my goodness, that's so freaking wrong. And I turned the globe. I seen Japan, and I felt sick to my stomach. I knew for a fact that's not where Japan goes. And I do believe this is one of the most significant changes as far as having a purpose, and is a great indicator to me. Why move Japan? From the way I see it, Japan used to be basically right here. And as well with this video, I'm going to assume that what we see on the ocean floor is actually as is and not a deception, which actually tells a lot. So as you can see, if Japan was here, you can pretty much see where it was dragged. There's actually a concave effect along here, which kind of supports the concept that Japan used to be here and now it isn't. To a degree anyhow. Unlike other places that I believe have been moved, Japan has left a great deal of the earth underneath behind, for good reason. My view on that, and my best guess, is that Japan was moved because of the extinction level event that did take place in 2011 called Fukushima. Fukushima was the meltdown of 3 nuclear reactors. happened after the tsunami. It was covered by the mainstream a little bit. Then it was covered pretty decently by the alternative news. And then about 2.5 years ago, every single alternative news shut up, and it was as if it never happened. A few people, and I'd like to plug the nuclear proctologist guy, Dana. His YouTube is Beautiful Girl by Dana. He has done a great deal of documenting the BC coast and showing a lot of evidence of the dramatic die-offs that's happened over the last while. So, my guess, as I was mentioning, is that Japan was moved due to the core meltdowns. Now, this wasn't done right away after the meltdowns. This was done a significant amount of time later. I'm guessing there's two possibilities here. Either Japan was just taken farther north to help keep the radiation on the northern half of the hemisphere. If one was to watch the models done by many government agencies from different countries, one of them being NOAA itself, American agency, I believe it is, but the National Oceanographic something agency, anyway, NOAA, they have their model, even, and it's only for so many hours or days of a release. But the models show that the radiation basically circles the Earth on the northern hemisphere first and takes much longer to reach the southern hemisphere. But the amount of time it takes to cover the whole northern hemisphere is not that long. You know, you're talking a matter of weeks, essentially, months at best. That thing was spewing for a long time, years. The initial blast was 1,000 feet high out of Reactor 3. Reactor 3 was a MOX fuel reactor, mixed oxide reactor, which is considered thousands of times worse than any of the regular reactors put together. This shit is so bad. I'm going to have to rant a little bit about radiation because it's a huge, I think it is the key reason for a lot of the changes. And the deception and the lie and the minimizing of radiation and the effects of it is just saddening and gut-wrenching. The entire nuclear industry is a lie. The science given to us on the effects of radiation, the amount of it, everything, it's all a freaking lie. Everything's a freaking lie. It's so minimized, it's unbelievable. To give you an idea, if you were to take 1 gram of an isotope, when I crunched my numbers, I used cesium. I think cesium-235. So you take 1 gram, and keep in mind these radioactive isotopes are atoms. So if you take 1 gram of it, and you were to take just a single layer, just if you could somehow create one single layer of isotopes on the entire surface of the planet, out of that 1 gram of radioactive isotopes, you would still have 5.5 billion atoms for every square inch on the planet. That's how small this shit is. And I assure you, it's deadly. So the concept of thinning out, there's no such thing. It's a lie, essentially. Technically, is it thinner? Sure. Does it make a difference? No. You don't thin out, it only spreads out, right? You're only stretching out the contamination. You're not making it any less deadly. It's so freaking deadly. There's so much. They compare natural radiation. The whole concept of even saying radiation is a lie. That's all we hear. Radiation, energy affects us, mutation. No, it's minimizing it. All the effects are based on exterior effects. So a lot of times, like think of a radioactive isotope like a light bulb. It's hot. If you touch it, you burn yourself. If it's across the room, not that bad. You get your hand really close, it kind of burns after a while. You go ahead and eat those things and put them inside of you. Now you have a fucking problem, right? You drink it, you breathe it, and I assure you anyone basically living on the northern hemisphere has already ingested radioactive isotopes, especially if you're in North America, especially if you're on the West Coast. Sorry. And Yeah, so that's what 1 gram can do, right? There's, at one point they were claiming there's 600 tons not accounted for of radioactive material. Now, a great deal of that probably landed just off the coast of Japan. They gathered some up. They actually filled, I don't know, was it 300 million 1-ton bags or something? Just some ridiculous amount of the earth that they dug up in Japan and put in bags, which is a very temporary. Anyway, they're burning the shit, and you can't burn it. You're only spreading it, you're only putting it in the atmosphere. You don't destroy anything by burning it. One more thing, a Geiger counter. I'm really just trying to sum this up for you to give you a brief idea how catastrophic the situation is and how much of a fucking lie the entire nuclear industry is. These are evil, evil people to do this. Or an evil, evil choice they've made at the very least to go along with it. Geiger counter. A Geiger counter doesn't pick up radiation energy. A Geiger counter reacts off of the decay. So every time that there's a neutron, or sorry, I should say a proton or electron that spits out, depending, it'll get a hit or a ping. So essentially, a Geiger counter is picking up pings. I call them. It's kind of the word I use. These pings from isotopes. So it doesn't account for the fact that a man-made radioactive isotope is far more energy giving off. That ping is huge compared to a natural radioactive isotope. A natural radioactive isotope only gives off energy for like millimeters or micrometers from the atom itself or the isotope itself. Man-made radioactive isotopes, when it when it blasts and decays, it goes out 3-4 feet for every single one. It's an incredible amount of energy given off. They're not even comparable. They had I don't even know if they managed, I think they just managed to mutate a fruit fly by just embedding the thing in natural radiation. Basically, natural radiation cannot harm us. We grew up on this planet with it. All life developed with it. What's it called? Osmosis, stasis, something, I forget. But anyway, we're balanced to it. You can put it in us, it just disappears, like it just goes everywhere. It's all the same. We're a part of it. Natural radiation does not affect us. If you start going outside our atmosphere, things can get stronger. It's a little different. But anyway, that's enough for radiation. It's freaking deadly. Unbelievable. It was, and is, at least was, and still partially is likely, a extinction level event. Just the blast that went into the air was probably multiple extinction level events in one there. There's so much of it is just incredible. And the fact that it was a MOX fuel reactor, which is reclaimed plutonium from old Cold War weapons, absolutely mind-blowingly deadly. They put it through a chain reaction the second time, make it even more extreme, more powerful, by having a larger differential between the amount of neutrons and protons within the nucleus. These things are so powerful. But anyway, sorry to bore you Mandela Effect people, but I had to give you an idea how catastrophic that is. It was and is an extinction level event. And these guys seem to make a move with the country of Japan, possibly, to help accommodate for some of that or to make a change. And who was it? Chris Curtis is another guy. He had mentioned about the body changes, the autonomy changes, and how that could quite possibly be for the radiation reason. And what was it, the science whistleblower, whatever it was, I think half of that was true, half of that was a wild goose chase. But they mentioned, that was mentioning the toxicity level. And so yeah, having a bigger liver, kidneys in a different area, maybe can help with the toxicity a little. You're talking so little, it hardly matters. And even Chris mentioned that, it might give us a little bit more time. Yeah, it's a joke. Realistically, did these people move this country? And I'm thinking actually maybe they capped it off. These cores got left behind, is what I'm hoping, and got capped. I'm really hoping not that it's spewing into the ocean. No, they didn't do it to save us. That's crap. Because if they had the power to do these great things, they would have went back and stopped it. It's more about extending the suffering. Maybe they have a lot longer agenda or playbook that they want to do before it's too late. And this was so catastrophic, it had to be slowed down. So that's really, I truly really think that that's the reason that Japan was moved, was to accommodate for the Fukushima reason. It was a number of years later, I suspect, and at that point the cores could have melted down far enough that they could move basically the main part of Japan, leave a bit behind perhaps of the bottom, which in turn capping it off. Which it's kind of interesting, there's still some little islands here too. So with any luck, they did cap it off, and it's not spewing into the ocean, like, because they were spewing, they were pumping water on it constantly. 300 tons a day were going back into the Pacific Ocean of radioactive water. It's just so horrendous. It's so extreme. It's mind-blowing. But anyhow, I'll try to get away from that. That was one of my rants I wanted to go on. I do apologize to you people who couldn't care less, even though the human race kind of is just slightly affected. In relation, let's see, what else do we have? Japan moved, capping, hopefully. The changes in our body to help that, possibly. It really just extends the situation. In relation to that, you know, if you learn some of these occult, satanic, demonic, freaking evil ways, you know, you see the stuff, the Hollywood concept of somebody being sacrificed. That's Hollywood, that's TV. That does not even begin to show the extent of evil and hatred and horror that they bring on. That's a ritual sacrifice, let's say. A demonic sacrifice is about pain and suffering, and the more horror and the more pain that they can bring onto whatever being that they are killing, the better. There's more chemicals released in the blood, there's more energy built up, and then when that person is sacrificed, that energy leaves the body, so that, you know, it goes. I'm not 100% on this myself, but the energy leaves the body, and in some way of looking at it, it pokes a hole between time-space and into space-time, or vice versa, however it goes. So the more energy you can get within the person before they die, the stronger the blast. You know, they go out screaming, and it's just horrifying. So the concept, I'm mentioning this because the concept of extending the death and suffering is right up their freaking alley, I assure you. Anyhow, off with Japan. As soon as I seen Japan, I was like, you gotta be kidding me. They moved Japan. They moved it further north, which as I mentioned about the radiation fallout encircling the northern hemisphere first, this would possibly even kind of keep it a little bit more north a little bit longer. With that said, back to South America, which is, I think, one of the main reasons for moving South America was to get it kind of farther away from Japan and to create a large body of water to help, even though I said there's no such thing as thinning out, but it kind of prolongs the effects. Yes, thinning it out a little bit more. In the ocean, you know, there is a lot of ocean, so, and it gets caught up in the ocean. Of course, it evaporates and rains down and blah, blah, blah. We eat it and drink it, and it's so horrible. But anyway, I'm thinking that they moved South America to help keep it away from the radiation a lot longer, make a larger body of water to help extend the time frame that we have on this planet. And of course, South America is their little haven for the future. So they're probably keeping that a little safer a little longer. As I mentioned, this is on the southern hemisphere. It is safer for longer. There's actually a nice big cold water current that comes right up from the Antarctic here that helps keep this part of the ocean cleaner compared to the rest when it's contaminated. Another one in relation, or has some connection to the radiation as well, but I think another, is Iceland. As soon as I see an Iceland, I'm like, you didn't, you fuckers. I know exactly why Iceland got moved. I think, anyway. First of all, Greenland isn't supposed to have this indent. This was basically just a regular full size. It might have got a little thinner at the southern part of it here. But by the looks of it, it looks like, and I've heard some other people mention this, it kind of looks like they chipped off some parts of Iceland, drug it up here, and then Greenland, sorry, took off a chunk of Greenland, it's up here, and then when they when Iceland got moved up here, it doesn't look so out of place. And there's kind of room for it. So it just kind of, I think there was a number of things done just to make things visually not look as extreme. And again, in the ocean floor, you can pretty much see, oh yeah, Iceland used to be right here. And you can see the drag marks into where it is now, which fits exactly to what I thought, where Iceland was. It was basically between Newfoundland and the UK. Although this seems a little bit low on the UK. I'm not sure, this could have got shifted up a little or something. I'm not real sure. I know there was some effects there. They had the volcanoes at one time, a handful of years back, and it was spewing over. They were worried about shutting down the airports, even in the UK, whether that was necessary or not. So why Iceland? What did Iceland do to deserve getting shoved closer to the Arctic? I guarantee you from here to here is a nice chunk colder. Iceland couldn't really afford or had no good reason to get colder. And again, with the radiation, the more north you are, in general around the world, of course the west coast of North America is really bad, but then in general, the northern part, the Arctic's probably melting right down. The radiation breaks down ice crystals. It also kills the microorganisms in the ocean, which starts to collapse the food chain. But besides the radiation and the cold, why would they do this to Iceland? Anybody know? Anybody? What did Iceland do? Somebody out there must know. I'll tell you what Iceland did. Iceland kicked out the banks, kicked out the bankers. That's what Iceland did. They kicked out the central bank. I don't know if it was the World Bank or the IMF at the time, or if it was their own central bank. I believe it was either the IMF or the World Bank. So essentially, hopefully you guys understand central banking, and it's basically the largest scam on the planet. It's a Ponzi scheme, right? A country no longer prints its own money and spends it into existence like it once did, and it holds value because the government of that country says, yeah, you can pay your taxes in that. And that's how a currency is created. A country's money is created, supposed to be, and brought into existence. That's pretty much no longer the case anymore. They just made some central banks be like, hey, we got a bunch of gold. How about we'll just print your money for you and lend it to you. This is quite literally what was done. It was done under the concept that, oh, if a country prints too much of its own money, it won't be worth nothing, so we'll borrow it instead. You're not borrowing their money. You're borrowing your own damn money. It's your money. Look at it. And they'd be like, oh, well, they get lots of gold in their vaults to back it up. That's a fucking joke. Any country's currency goes down and be worth nothing, I assure you that gold is not going anywhere, right? It's a scam. So what Iceland did, they were all in debt, and it was all interest on their own currency. Money owed of this money was never ever in existence. This is interest on their own currency. They probably got to their senses and realized this is bullshit. There was a lot more complicated with Iceland, where I think there was some laws broken in the amount that was borrowed and many other details. But in general, they said, screw you, get the hell out of our country. Actually, they put a bunch in prison because there was laws being broke. And if there was a way that they could have demonized Iceland and invaded it, they would have. But there wasn't a fucking thing they could come up with, I bet. How can we invade Iceland? They never done that to nobody. They couldn't come up with anything. They couldn't find a bunch of ISIS to go there so they could bomb the place. They couldn't come up with nothing. So I guess this is what they did. Pretty brutal, actually. That's my guess on that one. Not very funny. Let's see what else I got here. Russia. Quick little one on Russia. I'm just going to skip back to the map here to get a better look. So, Russia looks pretty big now. Perhaps a little. The only couple little things I'm going to mention with Russia is a lot of us kind of clued into North and South Korea is not where it's supposed to be. It was down off the coast of China. And now it has some border with Russia. Russia also now has some border with, and I'm not 100% that this wasn't the case before, but it seems new to me. Kind of 50-50 on it, but it also borders a little bit of Norway as well. Funky. And really, and maybe even some other areas down here, I'm not sure. It actually looks like there's a little connection to China now, which I'm sure you never existed. Oh, at that spot anyhow, this area. So it really, I think it just helps set up for future war and conflict with Russia. Not saying anybody is a good guy or a bad guy, really, in most cases, they're all bad. Every side's bad, so you gotta come to learn. And all the public and all the people in all cases are good, in general, right? So that was just a little bit I want to say about Russia. Next, something I started noticing when I was first going through, and when I realized that the eastern half of the United States was shrunk. My eastern part of Canada looked identical, and then that's why I could tell in proportion. Oh my goodness. And of course Florida used to be almost as big as California. Very comparable, and now it's like hardly half. When I first seen this, I couldn't believe it, and I thought that maybe to the same proportion of land loss, that maybe the same proportion of industry and people were gone. I had a very sad moment. I was devastated. I couldn't believe what I was looking at. I know how many millions of people are on the east coast of the United States, and it blew my freaking mind. And I was almost in tears. I kind of lost, got a little insane. I was thinking maybe they were listening on the computer or would listen at some time. I was basically, like, what have you done? I'm like literally talking to my computer, what have you done, right? I just couldn't believe it. And then come to find out, I've come to the conclusion, I'm pretty confident that there is no great loss of life on the planet or the east coast of the U.S. It's not impossible that maybe some, I don't know, lives get swapped around, souls in different places, I don't know. But in general, the population of Canada, New York City, United States, and the world seems to be what I remember it. And I had ways of figuring that out from one number to the other. Canada, New York City comparable, New York City being approximately 10 times for the country, and the world population having some similarities to the national debt of the U.S., but that didn't jump up twice. There was, 7 billion, and then it was 17 billion, or trillion debt. It's actually up to 20 now. So I see in basically the U.S., eastern U.S. is shrunk. And very clear to me, and especially the southeast region, it's very, very clear, and with Florida, it's very obvious to me. I see a similar thing when it comes to Europe. And some other places I see this is, which I found Europe odd, because this is, Switzerland, this has CERN, this is, I assume, where a lot of the problems stemming from, or a lot of people causing the effect. Another one that shrunk up was China. Another one that was shrunk up was India. Another one that was shrunk up, maybe not for this reason, or maybe multiple reasons, was Mexico. India, China, Europe, US, Eastern US, Mexico. What do all these places have in common? Anybody know? Ding, 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 ding. Time's up. Population. Everyone's heard that word more than once in the conspiracy videos. Population. So I don't know what happened. I have a few guesses. My first initial guess actually is the funky one, and I think it's wrong. Funny though, I thought maybe they did some sort of, spell-like thing, or whatever kind of combo of science and magic they got going on, and they did it towards the US, and they only got half it bounced back and got Europe. That was my kind of what I was thinking at one point might have happened, but no, actually, thinking more so that it was it was an attempt to kill us. It was an attempt to reduce the population. Gone bad. Didn't happen. But for some reason, it shrunk the land that everybody was on. I don't know, that's just kind of a working theory I have. That's the only thing I can really think of. And a lot of it because Europe is also shrunk up so bad. I'm thinking it must have been something like that for them willing to do that. Actually, look at the Nordic countries. They're fucking massive now. It's Norway, Sweden, Finland, I guess. It's the northern region of the map. It's kind of hard to tell where it's not a globe, but still, they look so big now. Man, Central Europe's like nothing. Unbelievable. Anyhow, it's kind of my guess for those. Perhaps it was a population reduction attempt gone bad, and this is the result of it. Australia. In my early videos, I was saying, yeah, Tasmania is definitely further away from Australia. New Zealand's definitely further away from Australia. I know that for a fact. I know Tasmania for a fact. New Zealand for a fact. It's like 4 times further than it should be. I thought maybe they were pulled away, but really, of course, listening to other people and looking at things more, it's probably more likely, or kind of more the case, that Australia was pulled up. Why was Australia pulled up? I have kind of 2 guesses. It might be both. One, again, dealing in relation to the radiation. There was a big, I don't know if you guys noticed, but there was, it was probably like a year ago or even less in recent times that, you know, the world economy was down. US, Canada, China, all the economic was doing bad, and the oil was down because of the oil, basically. All throughout this period, there's been a housing boom in Australia. Nobody knows about that. I clued into it because every time I went on Kijiji, there's all these ads to move to Australia. If you're under, I think, 30, 35, you had to be under a certain age, which is odd, right? Come to Australia, you know, we need tradespeople. It's like, wow, what the hell's going on in Australia? Yeah, it's a haven to get the hell away from the radiation. Now it's a little bit more north. So was that an attempt to kind of screw a little bit of the regular people, and you know, those going to South America are better off? Or really was it just brought up to help hide and make up for the changes within the East Indies and Japan? So basically because China shrunk and Japan got moved and Korea got moved, and so if everything got squished up a little, it wouldn't be so obvious at a glance, right? I guess I could mention, definitely I know for sure with the Philippines. The Philippines now has, it used to be an oval. I know for sure, I'm very strong on it was just the oval shape. It's funny how all the countries that have a major change, they won't do the outline, the red outline on Google Earth. But anyway, now the Philippines has 1, 2 stretches of islands coming off of it. That was never the case, I assure you. The Philippines was just kind of a regular oval shape, and of course it wasn't really where it is now. So that's kind of my best guess on Australia. One of 2 reasons, probably both. Madagascar, as I said, was moved previously. Let's say this here little point would have been right about here, and I'm not sure if that was just consequence of other things being moved around and that ends up getting hauled for some reason, or maybe they were just kind of sticking it up a little further to help in the radiation coming around in the ocean, maybe? I don't know. I really don't. Same with Sri Lanka. I don't know if that was just kind of accidental to other things being done, but I don't have really an individual reason as to why that was done. So, takes care of Australia, South America. One moment here. Okay, that brings us to Mexico. As I mentioned, Mexico falls within that high population region on the planet. Might be one reason why it kind of shrunk up. But clearly, to me, South America was moved over. And in doing so, it was actually kind of brought up some, I guess, because this is much shorter distance from the tip of Florida down to Venezuela or Colombia, even though Florida is only like half the length it's supposed to be. It's so incredible, especially like the Bahamas being right off the coast of Florida. Absolutely remarkable. Just far enough that you can't see it. Same from Cancun to Cuba. Just far enough that you can't quite see it. I think it's like 70, 80 kilometers or something. Just far enough away that you can't see it from one coast to the other. It's incredible. I got an interesting story for you. And of course you all can believe what you like. But in looking into things for a while, eventually I had a memory come back to me. And essentially, I dreamt about the Mandela Effect. I dreamt about some map changes happening in front of me. Kind of. Very minimal amount. And it was a partial lucid dream, right? And basically, and it was only a matter within the last 6 months that it had happened. Basically, I was dreaming or in a dreamlike state. You know, I don't even know for sure, was it during the night when I was sleeping, or was it just something that happened out of time, let's say, right? Because obviously if these changes took place while people were here, it had to be out of time that it took place. And of course there had to be a hell of a spell put on the people to get them to go along with it. Obviously sounds kind of funky, but I think it is quite complicated. So I had a dreamlike situation where I didn't see a lot visually, but basically I was in that state, and there was a lot of commotion far away over on my left, and it was like there was this extreme stuff going on, and very different and very powerful thing going on, something happening, and I could sense over on the far left away from me that something blobbed out, and almost like, and for lack of a better term, I apologize, but like gave birth, like something looped out, like a birth-like action, and then kept moving. And mind you, I couldn't see nothing. This was just kind of the sensation that I had. And then there was like this big force, and a big wave like went past the front of me, and then down and over on my right there was a bunch of something very powerful going on. And of course I was just like partially semi-conscious for this state, and of course you have a subconscious which is totally aware of everything, and in a partial, like a dream where you're kind of a little bit conscious of it, it's almost like there's two of you, almost like you can talk to yourself. Not that you do, but you interact with your own thoughts. And I was like, on the conscious level, I was like, oh my goodness, I couldn't believe it, like this is unbelievable. And subconsciously, same deal, really. Holy cow. And then I was thinking, because this is like a dream, and I've had a couple little things happen over my life, similar, not very many times, and I was like, consciously I was like, I gotta remember this, I gotta do something. And then subconsciously I was like, are you kidding me? How are you gonna miss it, right? Obviously. And then consciously I'm like, no, you gotta do something. I gotta remind myself. And then I'm like, quick, it's almost over, quick, right? Sorry guys, I know it sounds a little kooky. There was, at that point in time, there was this huge movement going down on the far right of me, and it was like this clickingness to it. Like there was large movement, but it was like a combination of microscopic clicks. Like, I'm sure you guys kind of get the concept of some movies that do that with the little robot blocks that can make anything, sort of deal, right? And essentially that was, I believe, South America moving at the time. Massive energy and massive change. And consciously I seen this, but still I don't remember that exactly. I just remember that sensation of a massive movement and that little bit of clicking. And then it was coming to an end. Somehow I knew that. Of course, subconsciously you know most of everything. And consciously I was like, I gotta do something. I gotta remind myself. And just before it was over, I put one visual in my head, which didn't come in handy enough until later on when I remembered. But I visualized basically a geyser spewing up, and then some sort of corkscrew-like action that closed it off and stopped it. That was the kind of little bit of a visual that I put into my head. And of course I woke up, or whatever, time returned, and I didn't remember a thing until a long time later now, when I was watching somebody else on a YouTube video discuss Mexico and the Yucatan Peninsula. And when he said it's almost like the Yucatan Peninsula was crunched over even more after South America was moved, it was almost like this was taken and hauled over even more, and Cuba shoved in, which closed off the Gulf. And boom, it came back to me like that. That's what it was. They did that on purpose. And I don't know if any of you guys figured out what I'm referring to now yet or not, but the Deepwater Horizon spill in 2010. They had crude oil spewing into the Gulf of Mexico, continue to spew into the Gulf of Mexico, I don't know, forever. I don't think they really ever stopped it. I'm not sure what the deal was. They probably didn't, because they never really said they did. I don't know, but it matches perfectly what I had in my dream circumstance, and that's kind of my belief at this point, that this was hauled around, Cuba was shoved in, all this was made smaller, and capped off that spewing oil into the ocean. Sounds like a good idea, sounds like a good thing. I assure you, I don't really think it was done by good people. They caused this problem, same with Fukushima. They caused a problem in the first place. Fukushima was basically a bomb ready to go. It was created on the shoreline, on the coast. All of it, I'm not patting anyone on the back. There may be far more complicated circumstances in our world and in our universe than I know of about different players. I don't know. But I'm not going to assume that because they did this and that they must be good people. I'm not too sure, but that's my view on the Yucatan Peninsula and the Gulf of Mexico being squeezed off. They stopped the Deepwater Horizon spill from carrying on and spewing crude oil into our ocean. Which, crude oil is like candy. It's like nothing compared to radiation. It's nothing. I mean, obviously it can kill some life, you know, they suffocate, whatever, it's nothing. Life can grow on crude oil, right? Crude oil is not that deadly. Back to my story what was this birth thing that was happening far off on my left? Keep in mind, I would have been standing somewhere, you know, somewhere in North America, Canada region, in my dream state. Would have been in that part of the world. So off to my left, what did I see? You know what I think I seen? It took me a little while before I clued into it all. There's a big, and a couple other people mentioned this, there's a big part of Libya missing, a big chunk of Libya. This is not supposed to be a big chunk out of here. Africa is supposed to have this kind of point-looking area, two peaks that come off on the right side. This is supposed to be pretty much level. There might have been a little bit of an indent here, a little bit of a concaveness, but not this rectangle chunk that we see missing now. Crazy as it sounds, my best guess at this point is that there was a chunk of land stolen from Libya, essentially, and they hauled it right out of here, right out through Spain and Morocco, and this would have been the action of the pulling apart and pushing back together. And of course, a lot of us see that Spain is much closer to Africa now, so maybe it got pushed back even more than it needed to be. Maybe all this was kind of done to help hide how small Europe got. Again, this would help if there's a bunch of extremists trying to get to Europe, or even just immigrants in general, let's say. It makes it much easier, a lot less distance for them to get there. You only have this far to go, or even to Sicily or Italy for that matter. So yeah, that brings me to my next one, missing land. We have a chunk of Libya missing. We have Costa Rica missing, because Costa Rica, and I had forgotten about this too, and a couple of people got some good videos out there you can go watch, thousands of tweets of how many people in the world could have swore Costa Rica was an island. It was an island. It was probably somewhere right about here. It was a rectangle shape. It basically pointed north and south, the rectangle would have, on like Puerto Rico, which was east and west. It would have been the second largest island after Cuba, or actually maybe third after Cuba and Dominican. It might have been comparable to the Dominican, I'm not sure, but thereabouts, like at least third largest island in all of the Caribbean area, or West Indies area. So Costa Rica's missing, although I think that could have been done at a different time, much earlier. I'm pretty sure that was done at least 2 years ago, because I had that mix-up come up for me. And keep in mind, even this dream I had, even though it was only within the last 6 months, I don't even necessarily think that is when it happened. You know, dreams happen out of time. If this event occurred, it happened out of time. So that isn't necessarily a time frame that I mean by that. Piece of Libya, Costa Rica's missing, and also a piece of Australia. Australia did always have this shape at the top, but I almost know for sure not this extreme, not this deep. Basically, there's a piece of a chunk of Australia missing, which is pretty beautiful land. Probably had some pretty amazing animals, you know, Australia and their specialty. That's what I know of, and I'm only referring to missing chunks of land. There's definitely lots of land missing, as I was mentioning about shrinking countries. So I would have to bear the question, where the fuck is it? Where did this land go? What are they doing? One can only speculate. They may have all gone to the same area, they may not have. I think it's possible that Costa Rica, they went and done its own thing, I'm not sure. My guess, and it would be a shot in the dark, I have this feeling that this piece of Libya and this piece of Australia probably met up somewhere here. You know those globes you see with that mystery island on it? You know all the freaking shows you see with mystery freaking islands? The globalist little haven of horror? Fucking dicks. Anyway, that's my guess. They made an island somewhere. That's my guess. And all I can say is I'm glad I'm not on it. Maybe it's a good haven for them. Maybe it's their whore haven for fucking hell, which is far more likely. I could only speculate the shit that could be involved there. Anyhow, moving on. Missing land, check. Could have made new land. Yucatan Peninsula, look at that. I think I got it all covered, people. That's my crazy concepts. Like I said, this shit doesn't come from nowhere. I've been on shit for over a decade. I know a lot of how these people think. I know a lot of their agendas. I understand multiple levels of deception. And it goes and goes, and everything is just another level, another lie, another level of deception. The concept of good and evil itself is a level of deception. Of course, that's getting pretty theoretical, but it's that deep and that complicated. I know I don't fully understand. All I know, there's only one thing to know for sure, that is good, and that's love. That's the only thing I'm 100% confident on, right? You know, is the green movement good? Beats the hell out of me. Is anything good? Beats the hell out of me. Is love good? Yes. And that's it. That's all I am certain on at this point in time, because things are so complicated, so abominated, so twisted, so much lies, so much deception. It's really heartbreaking for the human race overall. But anyway, guys, with that sad note, and actually, I don't want to leave it on the sad note. We're winning. We've won. Good has already won. These guys are pulling out everything right